Welcome to another episode of PPL Pod. So I want you to picture this for a second. It is freezing cold. You are deep in the woods of Canada, completely isolated, miles away from civilization.
Just kind of a brutal setup right off the bat.
Yeah, totally. And you're just 17 years old. You are terrified, huddled with your dog for warmth, and you are hiding out here trying to figure out how to survive, basically because the alternative, going back to a home where a predator was literally watching your every move, is just completely unthinkable.
It sounds like the opening to a gritty survival drama, you know? Like you imagine someone who has just been completely broken by the world. It's this moment of profound vulnerability where, honestly, most people would just give up.
Exactly. But here is the really jarring contradiction we are unpacking today. That scared teenager hiding in the woods didn't just survive. I mean, a few years later, she dyed her hair neon orange, threw on a literal pound of vintage necklaces, and gave the 1980s its ultimate bubblegum pop party anthem. Oh, wow. Okay, so we're talking about Cynthia and Cyndi Lauper, or, well, as the rest of the world knows her, Cyndi Lauper.
You got it. And that is exactly why we are doing this deep dive today. She is a fierce survivor, a professional wrestling pioneer, which is wild, a Broadway history maker, and this tireless activist who fundamentally redefined the role of women in rock and pop.
Yeah, the image people have of her is just so deeply ingrained in pop culture, right? You hear her name and you immediately picture the MTV generation at its most, I don't know, colorful and cartoonish.
Or a quirky girl having fun.
Exactly. But when you look at the sources and really peel back the layers of her actual origin story, the reality of who she is sits in stark contrast to that carefree persona. She is far, far more than just a quirky relic of the 80s.
I look at her career like a neon Trojan horse. Like, she used this insanely catchy, vibrant pop music to secretly smuggle radical feminist and socially conscious messages right into the mainstream. That is a great way to frame it. And to understand how she built that Trojan horse, we kind of have to look at the pressure cooker of her early life and, you know, the brutal realities of the early 80s music industry.
So where does this all start?
Well, she grew up in New York, mostly in Queens and Brooklyn. And from a really young age, she had this unconventional sense of style, right? Experimenting with weird clothing and wild hair colors.
And kids can be incredibly cruel to anyone who doesn't fit the mold. The sources note she was bullied relentlessly, like classmates literally threw stones at her.
Yeah, it was bad. And you'd hope she could find some refuge at home, but that wasn't the case either. Her parents divorced when she was 5, and she ended up living with a stepfather who was deeply abusive.
That is just awful.
It was. And the breaking point, which she later talked about in her memoir, was discovering that this man was actually peeping through the bathroom keyhole at her while she bathed.
Oh, God. That's horrifying. So she just bolts.
Yeah, she runs away to escape him. She originally intended to study art, which leads to that crazy, vivid scene you mentioned in the Canadian woods with her dog, Sparkle. She spends 2 whole weeks just living in the wilderness, relying entirely on her own instincts.
With just her dog, that is intense.
Right. But she eventually makes her way down to Vermont, takes some art classes, works some odd jobs, and starts trying to navigate the music scene. So by 1978, she forms a band called Blue Angel.
Okay, getting some traction.
Yeah, they get signed. And in 1980, they put out an album.
But let me guess, the industry had no idea what to do with them.
Spot on. Critics actually really liked it, but commercially, it was a total disaster. Lauper later joked that the album didn't go gold, it went lead.
Ouch, went lead.
Yeah, and the fallout was catastrophic. The band fractures, they have a massive falling out with their manager, Steve Masarski, and they fire him. So, in retaliation, he files an $80,000 lawsuit against them.
Wait, 80 grand in the early 80s? That is a staggering amount of money for a struggling artist.
Oh, it ruins her. This forces her straight into bankruptcy. This is her absolute rock bottom. She's working retail stores just to scrape by. She gets a job waitressing at an IHOP, and she ends up having to quit because the manager sexually harassed her and demoted her to a hostess.
It's just a barrage of trauma. And she even revealed later that she suffered a sexual assault by a band guitarist during this era too, right?
Yeah, she did. And then, as if it couldn't get any worse, comes the ultimate nightmare for a vocalist. She develops an inverted cyst in her vocal cord and temporarily loses her voice completely.
Okay, I need to stop you there for a second, because an inverted vocal cord cyst sounds terrifying, but I think most of us just associate vocal issues with, like, a bad sore throat. What actually happens physically that makes this a potential career ender?
Right, so when you sing, your vocal cords need to vibrate smoothly against each other to create sound. But an inverted cyst is essentially a lesion that grows into the vocal cord tissue itself.
Oh, wow. So it's not just on the surface.
Exactly, it's inside. And it prevents the cords from closing completely, which means air just escapes. For a singer with a world-class 4-octave range like hers, it doesn't just make you hoarse. It strips away your control, your pitch, like your entire instrument is just gone.
That has to be psychologically devastating.
Oh, completely.
So she has no money, she has survived assault, and the one thing she relies on, her voice, is gone. I mean, most people would just quit and become a music teacher or something. What was the catalyst that actually pulled her out of this?
Honestly. Pure, unadulterated resilience. This intense period of trauma basically forged her. It forced her to undergo rigorous vocal therapy to meticulously rebuild her voice. And if you look at her later activism, her fiercely protective nature over marginalized groups, it was born directly out of these wilderness years.
Because she knew what it felt like to have nothing.
Exactly. She had no one protecting her. She knew what it meant to be powerless, and she just refused to stay that way.
And she also refused to be molded into a traditional, compliant pop star because she meets a new manager, signs with Portrait Records, and in 1983, she releases her debut solo smash. She's so unusual. Yeah. And calling it a smash almost feels like an understatement.
It was a cultural earthquake. I mean, she became the first female artist in history to have 4 consecutive top 5 Billboard Hot 100 hits from a single debut album.
Which is insane. We're talking time after time, she bob all through the night, and of course, girls just want to have fun.
Yeah, and it earned her the Best New Artist Grammy in 1985.
Yeah.
Which is where she wore that literal pound of necklaces you mentioned.
Yes, but let's talk about girls just want to have fun for a minute, because this is where that neon Trojan horse analogy really pays off. A lot of people don't realize she didn't write that song. It was handed to her by the label.
Right. The track was originally written and recorded back in 1979 by a male musician named Robert Hazard, and his version is absolutely not an empowerment anthem.
Let me guess, it's the classic rock and roll trope of the guy who just wants to party with girls and refuses to settle down.
Honestly, it's worse. Hazard's original lyrics included lines like, "Some guys take a beautiful girl and hide her away from the rest of the world."
Yikes.
Yeah, the premise was basically a young man making excuses to his parents for why he's a womanizer. When Lauper read those lyrics, she recognized them as deeply misogynistic. She actually refused to sing it at first.
Wait, so the ultimate 80s party anthem was actually a calculated feminist rewrite. How do you take a creepy guy's excuse for womanizing and turn it into that? She must have completely rewritten it.
She performed a brilliant piece of musical jiu-jitsu. She didn't even rewrite the entire song. She just tweaked the perspective and the arrangement.
Really? Just tweaks?
Yeah. By simply changing the gender of the singer and changing some guys to some boys, and then shifting the music to this upbeat, Caribbean-infused pop reggae hybrid, the entire meaning flips.
Oh, that's brilliant. So instead of women being passive objects for male pleasure, young women are claiming their own autonomy. They are the ones demanding joy.
Exactly. She used the momentum of a patriarchal song, flipped it on its head, and turned it into a timeless anthem of female empowerment.
And she cemented that message with the music video, which actually won the inaugural Best Female Video at the MTV Video Music Awards. If you watch it, she didn't just hire a bunch of models. She specifically featured a multicultural cast of women.
Yeah, she wanted it to look like real life.
She put her real-life mother in the video. She even put her dog, Sparkle, the same dog she lived in the woods with, into the video.
It was just a celebration of her actual, messy, beautiful life. And fun fact, she also cast professional wrestling manager Captain Lou Albano to play her father in that video.
Which is wild.
It is. But that casting choice opens the door to one of the most bizarre and brilliant demographic expansions in music history.
Okay, I have to admit, I struggled to understand this pivot. You have just conquered MTV. You have millions of suburban teenagers worshiping your style. Why would you take all of that newfound cultural capital and aim it at professional wrestling? In the early 80s, wrestling was this gritty, regional, smoke-filled arena kind of entertainment. It wasn't mainstream pop culture at all.
And that is exactly why she did it. It was a stroke of demographic genius. The rock and wrestling connection, as it became known, turned into a massive cultural phenomenon.
Because it reached a different crowd.
Completely. MTV was reaching suburban youth, but wrestling reached a massive, working-class, blue-collar audience that traditional pop stars simply couldn't access. Lauper essentially helped put the World Wrestling Federation, the WWF, on the mainstream map, and in return, they put her in front of millions of new fans.
And she gets fully involved in the storyline, too. She feuds with Lou Albano on television. She starts managing a female wrestler named Wendy Richter. She isn't just making a quick cameo to plug an album. She is fully immersed in the kayfabe, the scripted reality of the wrestling world.
Yeah, she went all in. And it culminates in a massive event called The Brawl to End It All, broadcast live on MTV in July 1984. Lauper manages Richter to a women's championship victory over the fabulous Moolah. It was a massive rating success.
But the honeymoon doesn't last, does it?
No, it doesn't. In October 1985, there is a very real, very ugly incident in the ring known as a screwjob finish.
Now, for anyone listening who doesn't follow wrestling, what does a screwjob actually mean in practice?
So wrestling matches are predetermined, right? The performers know who is supposed to win before they step through the ropes. A screwjob is a real-life betrayal, where the promoter and the referee secretly conspire to change the ending without telling one of the wrestlers.
Oh, wow. So they go off script in real time.
Exactly. In this case, Wendy Richter was in the ring expecting to kick out of a pin. But the referee counted to 3 incredibly fast and rang the bell, legitimately stripping her of her championship on live television against her will.
That is so gross. And Lauper was so disgusted by how the promotion treated Richter, how they just exploited this woman, that she walked away from the WWF. She didn't come back for 27 years.
Talk about principle, right?
Yeah.
She was willing to walk away from a highly lucrative partnership because they crossed a moral line.
And that principle really begins to define her career as we move into the 1990s, because pop superstardom has a notoriously short shelf life, especially when an artist decides they have more important things to say than simply churning out radio-friendly dance tracks.
Yeah, the cultural landscape shifts, and Lauper shifts right with it. She releases albums like Hatful of Stars in 1993 and Sisters of Avalon in 1996.
Okay, but I don't understand the industry's logic here. She proved she was a hitmaker. If you sell 16 million records, shouldn't the label give you the freedom to write whatever you want? Doesn't the money buy you creative control?
You'd think so, right? But the music industry is incredibly rigid, especially for female artists. Male artists like Bruce Springsteen were allowed to mature and get political, but the machine wanted Lauper to stay a quirky, bubblegum cartoon. And these new albums were tackling incredibly heady, dark themes.
Like what?
Well, songs addressed homophobia, domestic violence, racism, and abortion. Ballad of Cleo and Joe is about the complicated double life of a drag queen. Say a Prayer was written for a friend she lost to AIDS.
And the label's response is just blatant hypocrisy. They absolutely loved her rebellious spirit when it was wrapped in neon and making them rich, but the second she used that exact same spirit to address pressing societal issues, they abandoned her.
Completely. They gave her virtually no promotional support. Sisters of Avalon spent exactly 1 week on the Billboard chart at number 188.
What?
Yeah. It is a harsh reality of the business. When you stop being a highly profitable, easy-to-digest product, the machine stops working for you. But denied a voice in the traditional pop sphere, Lauper pivots. She looks for a medium that actually embraces deep social issues, complex storytelling, and theatricality. She sets her sights on Broadway.
Which is such an interesting move. Why does a pop star translate so well to theater? I mean, a pop song gives you 3 minutes to hook an audience, but Broadway demands a 2-hour narrative arc.
Well, because she was always writing character-driven stories. Even her pop hits had clear characters and narratives. So when she was tapped to write the music and lyrics for the musical Kinky Boots, which opened in 2013, it was just the perfect marriage of her pop sensibilities and her deep empathy for marginalized people.
And the result is a juggernaut. It was nominated for 13 Tony Awards. Lauper made history yet again, becoming the very first woman to win the Tony Award for Best Original Score Solo.
That is just an incredible achievement.
It is. The show ran for 6 years on Broadway, playing over 2,500 regular shows and grossing $297 million.
The financial success is staggering, but the core of Kinky Boots is fundamentally a story about acceptance. It's about a struggling shoe factory owner teaming up with a drag queen to save the business. It's about embracing people for who they are, which connects directly back to that activist core we've been tracing since her days in the woods.
Her advocacy really has never wavered. She founded True Colors United back in 2008, specifically to combat LGBTQ youth homelessness. And she has been very open about the fact that she was deeply inspired to get involved in gay rights advocacy because of her sister, Ellen, who is a lesbian and someone Lauper views as a role model.
Yeah, and if we look strictly at the historical timeline of her advocacy, just laying out the facts here, she has consistently used her platform for political and social causes. Like, in December 2022, she performed her song True Colors at the White House for the celebration of the Respect for Marriage Act, which provided federal recognition to same-sex marriages.
Right. And according to the historical record, impartially speaking, she also launched the Girls Just Want to Have Fundamental Rights Fund that same year. And the stated mission of that fund is supporting organizations fighting for abortion and reproductive health care access. It is a direct continuation of the themes she was writing about back in the 90s when the record labels dropped her.
She never stopped being that advocate.
No, she didn't.
Which really brings us full circle to that opening tension. The journey of this single life is staggering.
The runaway teenager, scared, living in the freezing woods with her dog, that girl grew up to become a defining cultural figure of 2 centuries. I mean, she is an Emmy, Grammy, and Tony winner. She has sold over 50 million records. And as of November 2025, she is an inductee into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
And she is still pushing forward. You know, she embarked on her 2024 to 2025 Girls Just Want to Have Fun farewell tour, and she's gearing up for her first ever Las Vegas residency at the Coliseum at Caesars Palace starting in April 2026.
She is going out exactly on her own terms.
Exactly. And as we wrap up this deep dive, there's a final thought I want you to mull over long after we sign off. Consider what the phrase having fun really meant to Cyndi Lauper.
It certainly wasn't about frivolous partying.
Never. Based on everything she survived, the abuse, the bankruptcy, the loss of her voice, the industry rejection fun, was the radical joy of survival.
The radical joy of survival. I love that.
Yeah, it was the fundamental right to self-expression without fear of violence or mockery. Her entire life's work has been a fight to ensure that marginalized people, whether they are homeless, youth, women, or anyone deemed unusual, could experience that exact same freedom.
She truly is the neon Trojan horse. Thanks for listening to People Pod. Keep tuning in for more stories worth knowing.